Chapter 81, Met Her. The wind felt colder in the old neighborhood. Jackson hadn't been back here in years, but somehow, nothing had changed. The cracked sidewalk. The quiet bakery on the corner. The bookstore where she used to linger, tracing her fingers along spines like they whispered secrets only she could hear. His footsteps slowed as he reached the street Daniel had mentioned. She lived nearby now. Jackson stood across from the modest building, his cap low, hands shoved in his coat pockets. It was ridiculous, he thought, to be this nervous. He'd faced stadiums of strangers, sung to millions, and stood beside kings. But none of that prepared him for the thought of seeing her again. Seeing Hannah. He didn't know what he was hoping for. Forgiveness. Closure. Or maybe, just a glimpse of the girl who used to sit beside him at midnight, humming along to his demos, eyes shining like he'd hung the stars just for her. Jackson's heart pounded as he stood in front of her door. Unit 302. He stared at the number like it might burn itself into his memory. His hand hovered in the air, hesitating. Coward. That's what he'd been for 3 years. He'd written her name into songs. Sung to crowds that never knew she existed. Smiled for cameras while carrying the weight of everything he never said. And now, she was just one knock away. His fingers finally curled into a fist and tapped once. Twice. It was silence. Silence that pierced his heart. The hallway was quiet. Footsteps approached. The door creaked open. Hannah. Hair tied up in a messy bun, wearing a soft blue sweater, barefoot on the wooden floor. She froze when she saw him. And then her whole face lit up. Jackson, she gasped. He gave a small smile. Hey, she stared for a beat before stepping aside. Wow, come in. He stepped inside. Everything smelled like home chamomile and old pages. Books stacked in corners. A blanket tossed carelessly on the couch. She turned to face him. I didn't know you were back. When did you come back? Jackson didn't answer right away. Instead, he pulled the black notebook from under his arm and held it out to her. She looked at it, puzzled. What's this? He finally met her eyes. Something I should have given you a long time ago. Hannah took it, flipping to the first page. Her breath caught. Her eyes scanned the pages, lips parting. Familiar words stared back at her letters, lyrics, notes, the ones she had once received without knowing who they were from. The ones she had clung to. She looked up, stunned. You. Jackson didn't explain. Didn't defend himself. Just looked at her, shame and longing in his eyes. I thought you were happy with him, he said quietly. With Daniel. I thought it was better for all of us. So I left. He swallowed hard, voice cracking. But I never stopped. Not once. Hannah's throat tightened. I loved you, Hannah, he whispered. I still do. And I know I don't deserve anything after walking away. But I needed to tell you. It was always you. He took a step closer. I'm not asking for much. Just, Jackson fidgeted nervously. Is there still a chance? Even a small one. Hannah held the notebook tighter, blinking fast. And Jackson stood there, heart exposed, eyes vulnerable, waiting for the answer he never thought he'd have the courage to ask for. Hannah didn't speak at first. The room felt heavier now, filled with everything he hadn't said for 3 years and everything she had quietly hoped for without ever daring to name it. Her fingers gently brushed over the notebook again, flipping through the familiar curves of his handwriting. Page after page, lyrics she'd fallen in love with. Words that had made her feel seen when she felt invisible. Letters that had always arrived when she needed them most. She'd held on to them. Every one. And now, she knew. You. Her voice came out softer than she meant. You were the boy who listened. Jackson didn't move, just nodded slowly. And you were the girl without a name. His voice trembled with the weight of memory, of regret, of love long buried. He looked at her nervously, unsure of what would come next. But Hannah didn't say anything. She just closed the distance and wrapped her arms around him. No questions. No accusations. Just a hug 3 years overdue. Chapter 82, After the Storm. The city lights glittered outside the glass windows of the small apartment, soft jazz humming in the background. A warm breeze drifted through the open balcony door, brushing past the curtains like a gentle sigh. Jackson stood by the kitchen counter, sleeves rolled up, slicing strawberries with unusual focus. Behind him, Hannah was curled on the couch, notebook in hand, his notebook now filled with her own scribbles beside his old lyrics. A shared story. Finally written together. 3 weeks. That's how long it had been since he showed up at her door. Since he finally told her the truth, not with grand explanations or excuses, but through the notebook and the way he looked at her like she was still his song. And she'd believed him, trust him and love him like never before. And now, they were trying. Learning each other again, this time without letters or notes. No more silence. No more waiting. Just them. He walked over and placed the bowl of strawberries on the table beside her. "You're still mixing my lyrics with your edits," he teased, eyeing the pages. Hannah grinned up at him. "Your verses needed some rhythm." Jackson raised a brow, feigning offense. "You hurt me." She laughed and leaned up to kiss his cheek. "I know you love it." He did. Not just the teasing or the kisses. But the way she looked at him now, not with questions or confusion, but with quiet certainty. Like he'd come home. Hannah leaned in his chest and made herself comfortable, while Jackson took her in his embrace, wrapping his arms around her. "You know," she said, flipping a page, "I used to imagine what it'd be like to meet the boy who wrote those letters. I didn't expect him to be a world-famous singer with terrible texting habits." He chuckled. "You forgot charming, sexy, and devastatingly handsome. Modest, too." He pulled her closer, rubbing her back slowly. "I still can't believe you waited." "I didn't wait," she said softly. "I just never forgot." Outside, the stars were faint, but they didn't need them tonight. They had their second chance. And this time, neither of them was letting go. Chapter 83, It Was Us. The photo went live at 11:42 p.m. Just one picture. Jackson, in a hoodie and backwards cap, eyes soft as he looked sideways at the girl next to him, and Hannah, hair wind-tousled, smiling like the whole sky had opened up just for her. Behind them, the city blurred in soft lights. The caption was simple. Jackson Walker. It was always you. At the girl without a name. Hashtag the girl without a name. Hashtag the boy who is listening. Hashtag FM notes. Within 5 minutes, the internet exploded. At Moonlit Words. Wait. This is not a drill. They were real. At FMaddict22, the iconic FM notes couple was Jackson and Hannah. At Shipsailors. You're telling me I spent months writing fanfiction about these two and it was actually them. At Midnight Naughty Addict. The boy who listened, and the girl without a name, they found each other. I'm SOBBINGGGG. At Chriskener Official. I would like to formally announce that I was the accidental matchmaker. You're welcome. At Poetry and Wi-Fi. This is like when your favorite book ends with the perfect epilogue. I need nothing else in life. I'm complete. At Secret Letters Club. They were writing to each other. On the same app. And had no idea. This is literally a drama plot. I'm shaking. At Soft Sundays. I've never met either of you, but I feel like I just watched 2 stars fall into the same sky. Thank you for sharing this with us. Milky Way. At Wenthyrite. I always wondered if the girl without a name ever found her way. Seeing you together, now I know she did. Face holding back tears. At Kukred's Club. This is the kind of love story that makes you pause your whole life just to feel it. Thank you for letting us in. At Mornings with the Music. Love is in the details. The way he wrote. The way she replied. The way we all fell in love watching them fall in love. At FMNetescult. Raise your hand if you've been personally invested in this love story since letter number 3. At Coffee for Breakups. Y'all better do a book deal, a Netflix deal, and a wedding livestream. We deserve it. At Mystery Notes 94. The Jackson Walker. That Jackson. No way this wasn't fate. I'm crying in surround sound. At Playlist Poet. Every love song he's ever sung makes sense now. Someone make a full playlist of their letters and songs. I'll pay. At You Had Meet Letter 2. So let me get this straight. We were all reading these late night FM notes thinking, no way this is real, and now it turns out we were watching a literal fairy tale happen in real life. Within an hour, hashtag FM notes trended worldwide. People dug up old posts, old quotes, piecing together the story that had held them all captive for months. Clips resurfaced of Jackson singing heartbreak ballads that suddenly made too much sense. Fans rewatched old Chris show broadcasts and realized those anonymous letters weren't fiction. They were confessions. Real ones. And now, everyone knew the ending. Or maybe, the beginning. At The Girl Without a Name posted next. To the boy who was always listening. Thanks for waiting. I'm not hiding anymore. At Penant Playlist. I reread letter number 7 after this post and had to pause to cry in the kitchen. No one talked to me today. At Justigirlanda Fanfic. Chris better host an anniversary radio special, a wedding countdown series, and the entire honeymoon playlist. At Chrisfan Radio. I will never listen to FM notes the same way again. What a legendary love story. I am invested for life. At the epilogue please. Now we need couple interviews. Behind the scenes. First messages. Deleted letters. Give it all to US. At Book Talk Librarian. Someone please tell me this is getting published. I want this story in hardback with gold foil and tears on every page. At the final letter. Imagine loving someone through letters, not knowing they were right beside you all along. Real love wins. The comments were chaos, but in the quiet corner of their screen, the only thing that mattered was the message notification blinking between them. You and at the boy who is listening have been messaging for 1 year, 3 months, and 12 days. Jackson liked the post, and replied privately. Jackson, finally feels real now, doesn't it? Hannah, it always was. Chapter 84, The World Knows Now. Hannah blinked at her screen. The notifications hadn't stopped in hours. She had thought maybe 10, 20 people would care. That only the small group who'd followed the FM Notes account from the beginning would notice. She had been wrong. Very, very wrong. The post had gone viral. Not just trending exploding. Screenshots of their letters were being reshared, quotes highlighted in calligraphy, fan art popping up with imagined scenes of them writing to each other across time and space. Even Chris had done a follow-up episode on his show. To the girl without a name and the boy who never stopped listening, thank you for showing us what it means to love only with words. You brought back the kind of romance we all thought only lived in stories. She scrolled through the comments again. Dozens of strangers cheering them on. Messages from couples saying the letters had brought them closer. Teens saying they'd started writing their thoughts again. A retired woman saying she felt young just reading their exchanges. It was surreal. Are you okay? Jackson's voice came gently from behind her. She turned around from her desk, cheeks glowing. He was leaning against the doorframe, hair messy from the wind, a mug of tea in each hand. She reached for one. I think the world just shipped us harder than we did. He laughed, walking over to her. You're officially more famous than me now. She raised a brow. Please. I was always the fan favorite. They both laughed, and as the sound faded, he knelt beside her chair and looked up at her with that softness she was still getting used to. The kind that said, you were worth every word I waited to write. I didn't do this for the world, he said. I did it for you. But, seeing everyone celebrate with us, it makes it feel even more real. Hannah nodded. It is real. It's just, ours now. No more hiding. She hesitated, then reached for her phone. A new post. No riddles. No anonymity. She typed, then glanced at him before hitting share. Hannah Dawson. Turns out the boy who was listening was right beside me all along. Thank you for writing to me, even when you didn't know if I'd ever write back. The girl without a name. Jackson smiled, then held up his phone and posted right after. Jackson Walker. And she did write back. Every letter saved me. Every word gave me hope. I'd write them all again, just to find her one more time. Then he leaned in and kissed her cheek softly, ready to show them what comes after the last letter. She grinned. Let's write that part together. Chapter 85, After the Last Letter, Chris's special episode. The familiar soft jazz intro faded out, replaced by the smooth, amused voice of Chris through the speakers. Good evening, dreamers. This is Chris, back with a very special episode of Voices Between the Lines, but tonight, it's not anonymous. Tonight's letter has names. 2 of them. A light chuckle played on the airwaves. I know many of you have followed this story for months. Yes, the girl without a name and the boy who is listening. You laughed with them. You cried with them. You sent me fan theories and even playlists. And tonight, we're pulling back the curtain. The studio camera pans slowly to the cozy corner of the set. Warm light, stacks of letters on the table, all the ones that Chris had kept safely over the year, and 2 very familiar faces seated side by side. Jackson smiled sheepishly at the camera. Hannah offered a tiny wave, cheeks pink. Yes, Chris said with a grin. They're here. The mysterious pair behind the most talked about anonymous love story on FM Notes. The studio erupted in soft applause. So, Chris leaned in. Who wants to break the ice? Jackson. Hannah. How did it feel sending letters to someone you didn't know, but sort of already knew? Jackson exhaled through a smile. Honestly, terrifying. I didn't know she was the same girl I worked with at first. I just knew her words. They stuck with me. And you, Hannah? Chris turned to her. She glanced at Jackson before speaking. He listened. When I was invisible to the world, he heard me. The letters became my safe place. And now, Chris teased. Still writing letters. Jackson reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded page. Still do. This one's for her birthday next week. The audience melted. Chris laughed. This might be the first live letter reading in FM Notes history. Shall we frame it? They all laughed. Chris leaned back. You know, when I first read one of those letters on air, I never imagined it would end in front of cameras, and with actual eye contact. I didn't either, Jackson said softly. But I'm glad it did. The screen behind them lit up with a reel of fan reactions, tweets, and messages pouring in. At Pen and Moonlight, Jackson is so handsome. The way he wrote. Ah, poetic boyfriend material. I'm crying. At Soft Letter Soul, this is like watching a book come to life. At Chris Nation Radio, Chris better get invited to the wedding. Just saying. At Bookshop in Midnight Lane, a story that started with no names, ended in the most beautiful way. Chris cleared his throat as the show began to wrap. Any last words for our listeners tonight? Jackson turned to Hannah, their fingers gently brushing on the table. I used to sing for strangers, he said. Now I write for one person. Hannah smiled. And I used to write in silence. Now I answer back. Chris raised his coffee mug. To words, to music, to love. And to stories that remind us even in the noise, someone out there is listening. The show faded to its signature theme. And for the first time, it ended not with a mystery, but with a promise. Chapter 86, Quiet Hearts, Shared Moonlight. The world outside was buzzing tweets, messages, fan edits, replayed audio clips of their confessions on Chris's show. But inside their apartment, it was still. A warm golden lamp glowed in the corner. Rain tapped lightly against the windows. The scent of lavender tea drifted from the mugs on the coffee table. Jackson's guitar leaned nearby, forgotten. The television was on but muted, a cozy romantic drama neither of them were really watching. Hannah curled up on the couch, wrapped in a thick blanket, her feet tucked under Jackson's thigh. He was flipping through a book, not reading, just pretending, eyes sneaking glances at her every few seconds. She caught him. Again. What? She asked with a lazy smile. He shrugged. Just checking if you're still real. She laughed softly, reaching out to tug him closer. I'm real. Just sleepy. Jackson leaned over and pressed a kiss to her temple. Sleepy's cute on you. Everything's cute on me, she mumbled into his shoulder. You're not wrong, he said, kissing her cheeks. A quiet pause settled in. You know, she said, voice barely above a whisper, I used to imagine nights like this. Way back, when we were just letters. I didn't know your face, or your name. But I imagined us, safe. Together. Drinking tea. Doing nothing. He smiled, setting the book aside. I used to imagine reading your letters out loud to someone someday. Didn't think it'd be you, reading them back. They stayed like that for a moment. Just breathing. Then Hannah stirred. Wanna write one more? A letter? He asked. She nodded. Jackson stood, fetched 2 small sheets of stationery from the drawer, the kind they always used, and 2 pens. They wrote in silence, backs to each other, legs touching. And when they were done, they swapped. No secrets anymore. No anonymity. But still, a little magic. Hannah opened his letter. Even when you're right next to me, I miss you the second you blink. Thank you for not staying invisible. Thank you for choosing me every ordinary day after all the extraordinary ones. P.S. This counts as tonight's goodnight kiss. Her eyes stung with happy tears. She looked up and found Jackson already watching her, smiling like he always had in her imagination, soft, quiet, with eyes that felt like home. I love you, she whispered. Jackson reached for her hand. And I love you more. They sealed this night with a kiss. Not some rushed desired one, but the simple slow loved one. They didn't need the world to be watching. This quiet, content night was the happy ending that felt most like them. Just a boy who always listened. And a girl who finally had a name. Chapter 87, A Song Just for Her. The lights dimmed. A hush swept through the stadium, thousands of fans holding their breath in electric anticipation. The screens glowed softly with past images, snippets of handwritten letters, blurred photos from FM notes, anonymous messages that once meant everything to strangers, and now, everyone knew they belonged to them. To Hannah. To Jackson. Cheers erupted as the spotlight fell center stage. Jackson stepped out with his guitar slung across his chest, dressed in all black with a soft smile on his face, the kind that held 1,000 memories. Hey, his voice echoed through the mic. You all know this one. The crowd screamed. But maybe, you didn't know what it was really about. He glanced to the side of the stage. A single beam of light followed his gaze where Hannah stood backstage, hand pressed to her heart, watching him with tears threatening to spill. Jackson looked back at the crowd. Tonight, for the first time, I get to sing this song with her name in my heart. No more guessing. No more secrets. He strummed once. Then again. And the first notes of Girl Without a Name filled the arena. Only this time, he changed the lyrics. You used to be a letter lost in the dark. But now you're a melody I hold in my arms. I found your name between silence and stars. And I'm never letting go wherever you are. The crowd swayed. Phones lit up the air like a galaxy built just for the two of them. Mid-song, the camera panned to Hannah. She covered her mouth in surprise as her image filled the jumbotrons. Fans screamed. Some cried. And then they started chanting. Han-na, Han-na, Han-na. Jackson's eyes locked on hers again as he sang the final chorus, voice cracking just a little under the weight of all that love. You were never invisible. Not to me. You were always my song. When the final note rang out, silence fell again, soft and stunned. Then the stadium erupted. Thunderous applause. Fireworks. Confetti. A sea of fans cheering not just for an artist but for a love story they'd been part of from the very beginning. Jackson whispered into the mic. I wrote every note for you. And tonight, I sing it for the world to hear. Hannah wiped her tears and mouthed back, I love you. And somewhere in that chaos, that music, that storm of hearts beating is one the boy who listened and the girl who once had no name found their forever. Chapter 88, You Always Had My Name. It was well past midnight when the concert ended. The stadium was quiet now, just the low hum of staff wrapping cables and sweeping confetti. The world had cheered, clapped, cried, and now it was just the two of them tucked away backstage, where everything began years ago with words and wishes. Jackson stood by the edge of the empty stage, overlooking the rows of now vacant seats. Hannah walked up behind him and looped her arms around his waist from behind. He covered her hands with his, smiling as he leaned into her warmth. I still remember the night I first sent a letter to the show, she whispered. And I remember the night I read it, he replied. Silence settled between them like a soft blanket, not awkward, not heavy. Just peaceful, like their hearts had been looking for this moment for years. Jackson turned to face her, reaching into his coat pocket. There's one more thing I've been meaning to say. Hannah blinked, confused. What? He pulled out a small black envelope, the kind he used to send through FM notes. She took it slowly, fingers trembling. Opened it. Inside was a single card. In familiar handwriting, it read. To the girl who once had no name. You've always had mine. When she looked up, he was already on one knee. No stage. No cameras. No crowd. Just them, the boy who listened, and the girl he never stopped listening to. Jackson held out a simple ring, delicate and elegant just like her. I loved you when I didn't know your name. I loved you through words, through songs, through letters. And now, I want to love you through everything else. Forever. He smiled, eyes shining. Will you marry me, Hannah Dawson? Hannah let out a soft gasp, hands flying to her mouth. Her eyes were glassy, lips trembling. Then she laughed through her tears and nodded so fast her bun came loose. Yes, she whispered, pulling him up and kissing him like she couldn't wait another second. Yes, yes, yes. And in the echo of the empty stadium, under soft backstage lights, the boy and the girl who once wrote to each other in silence finally got their loud, beautiful ever after. Chapter 89, Good Morning, Fiancé. Sunlight poured into the apartment like warm honey. Hannah stirred awake, blinking slowly against the golden light. For a moment, she didn't move, not because she was tired, but because everything felt too perfect to disturb. A soft sheet tangled around her legs. The air smelled faintly of coffee and cedarwood. And his arms were around her. Jackson, her fiancé. Her lips curled instinctively at the word. She rolled over to see him already awake, propped up on one elbow, watching her like he still couldn't believe she was real. "You were staring," she mumbled sleepily. "I was appreciating," he replied, kissing her forehead. "Fiancé privileges." She giggled, reaching up to touch the ring on her finger like she was still checking it wasn't a dream. "It really happened," she whispered. He nodded. "It really did." The moment was soft, private, unhurried until her phone vibrated off the nightstand. And then again. And again. She groaned and reached for it blindly. "It's too early for this." But the notifications didn't stop. She sat up, brows furrowing. Jackson frowned too. Curiously, he grabbed his own phone and instantly winced. "Okay," he muttered, "so, maybe we broke the internet." Hannah stared at her screen. Trending. #FM Notes Proposal. #The girl without a name. #Jackson and Hannah forever. #He listened, she said yes. #real life love story. Jackson rubbed the back of his neck. "I might have posted a little something last night." She gasped and grabbed his phone. The latest post on his feed showed a black and white picture of them backstage. Her arms were wrapped around his neck, his forehead resting against hers, the ring glinting under the soft lights. Caption: "To the girl who had no name, you've always had mine." The comments were a mess of joyful chaos. @Chris Biggest Fan. Wait. This is real. This isn't a skit. @SoftForStrangers. I cried in my soup. Congratulations, you beautiful letter writing weirdos. @Moonlight Tears. So the FM Notes story was real. I was rooting for you guys before I knew it was you. Loudly crying. @ChrisShowOfficial. Just woke up and screamed. My boy and girl did it. They did it. And no one told me. Rude. Expect a wedding episode. And I better get to MC it. @FanficQueen22. I need the wedding. I need the vows. I need the playlist. I need the honeymoon itinerary. I need everything. @LetterLyrics. This is better than the plot of any K-drama. You can't convince me otherwise. Hannah covered her face. Oh my god. I think we accidentally became national sweethearts. Jackson grinned. Not accidentally. Just, romantically. She shoved his shoulder, laughing. He leaned in, voice low. Let's give them something even better to talk about. She raised a brow. Like what? He kissed her slow, sure, full of forever. Like a love story that never ends. Chapter 90, The Wedding That Started with a Letter. The sun shone bright over the coastal venue, where waves lapped quietly against the shore and wind played gently with the strings of white fairy lights above. Everything looked like it had been pulled straight from a dream. Or a love letter. Because that's exactly what it was. Rows of wooden chairs lined the aisle, all filled with familiar faces, friends, family, fans lucky enough to get invited through a special FM Notes giveaway. Everyone was dressed in muted tones and hopeful smiles. Chris stood at the end of the aisle, grinning proudly in his black suit, holding a mic instead of a script this time. All right, he whispered to the front row, I cried like 5 times already and the bride isn't even here yet. Cue soft laughter. Then music began, not from a random playlist, but from a live acoustic band. The opening chords of The Girl Without a Name began to play, a song Jackson had written for her, the one he never released until now. Everyone stood. And there she was, Hannah. In a flowing, off-shoulder white gown that caught the breeze like poetry. Her hair half up, pinned with tiny pearls, and her eyes shining not just with tears, but with joy so deep it felt sacred. Jackson exhaled sharply, stunned, like he was seeing her for the first time. As she walked down the aisle, everyone could see the history between them. The letters, the broadcasts, the near misses, the anonymous chats, the private messages that slowly stitched them together. Now, they were here. When Hannah reached him, she smiled and whispered, still listening. Jackson laughed, always. Chris stepped forward, and for once, didn't crack a single joke. His voice was gentle, sincere. We are gathered here for something rare, he said. A love story that started with no names, no faces, just words. Just feelings. Just two people, finding each other through honesty, heartbreak, and hope. He turned to Hannah. You once wrote that you didn't believe anyone would really see you. Then to Jackson. And you wrote that maybe music would help you speak when words failed. Chris smiled. Well, guess what? You both heard each other and now the rest of us get to witness the most beautiful reply. They exchanged vows handwritten, of course. Folded in tiny notes, passed into each other's palms, read aloud through shaking voices. Jackson's ended with, I don't want to just be the boy who listened. I want to be the man who shows up, every day, for the rest of our lives. And Hannah's, even without a name, you made me feel known. So I'm giving you mine. Chris beamed. By the power granted to me by love, late night radio, and a very enthusiastic fanbase, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss. Jackson didn't wait. He kissed her like every chapter of their story led to this soft, slow, meaningful. The entire crowd erupted into applause, sniffles, and a few excited screams. Somewhere in the back, a banner read, From FM Notes to Forever. Chapter 91, From FM Notes to Forever. The reception was held under the open sky, with strings of golden lights twinkling like stars and soft music playing in the background. Long wooden tables were scattered across the lawn, filled with cozy touches, handwritten place cards, miniature love letter favors, and Polaroids from their journey tacked up on boards labeled, From Then, and, To Now. Everyone was still buzzing from the ceremony. People wiped their eyes, clutched their hearts, and kept whispering, Did you hear those vows? Chris took to the stage first, raising a glass. Well, if you've listened to the late night show long enough, you already know this love story better than your own, he joked, earning a round of laughter. But I gotta say, seeing them standing there, making it real, I think I speak for all of us when I say, worth every anonymous message. He looked at Jackson and Hannah and grinned. To the two people who taught us that sometimes the bravest thing you can do, is write the first letter. Everyone clinked glasses. Then came the toasts. Daniel stepped up next. I've known Jackson since we were kids. I've never seen him so sure of anything in his life except maybe guitar strings and coffee. He turned to Hannah. Thank you for being the quiet song he didn't know he needed. Liam stepped up next. I watched Hannah stay up all night wondering if he'd reply. Wondering if she was too much or not enough. But Jackson, he turned to him, you made her feel like she was just right. Cue the tears. The night rolled on with first dances and shared memories. Jackson and Hannah danced to a stripped acoustic version of the song that brought them together. Not a dry eye in the house. At the dessert bar, guests scribbled messages on a guest book labeled, Your Turn to Write. Still rooting for you, even after the I do's. From one anonymous note to another, thank you for believing in love. Please adopt me into your love story. And then, a surprise announcement. Chris grabbed the mic. Before we call it a night, guess what? Jackson and Hannah have decided to publish their letter story. Every message, every near miss, every reply. It's all going into a book, dear stranger. The crowd cheered. Fans were already pulling out their phones. The couple beamed, holding hands as flashes went off and everyone swarmed to congratulate them. Later, long after the party had mellowed and the stars were high above, Jackson pulled Hannah aside. You okay? He asked, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. She nodded, eyes glowing. This is exactly how I imagined it, back when I was still writing to a boy I thought I'd never meet. Jackson smiled. And now, she leaned in, whispered against his cheek, now I get to write forever with you. Final chapter. Always, even in silence. The world slowed around them. Golden light filtered through the open windows, casting quiet shadows across the living room floor. A record played softly in the background, the kind of music you don't dance to, but feel deep in your bones. Jackson sat on the couch, his fingers laced with Hannah's, their hands resting between them like they'd always belonged there. Outside, the trees swayed in the breeze. The scent of tea and cinnamon still lingered from breakfast. Their life, no longer made of longing and late-night letters, was now built from the quiet rhythm of shared mornings, inside jokes, and sleepy forehead kisses. Hannah leaned her head on his shoulder. Remember when we used to write to each other without knowing? He smiled, turning to kiss her temple. You knew me better than anyone, even back then. She laughed softly. You were the boy who listened. And you were the girl without a name, he said. Until one day, you gave it to me. Along with everything else. Silence settled between them, but it wasn't empty. It was full. Full of the journey they had taken. Full of letters, missed chances, and finally found tomorrows. Full of love. Their wedding photo sat framed on the shelf. Their names etched beneath it, as if the universe had finally written them into the same sentence. Together. Forever didn't feel loud or dramatic. It felt like this. Soft. Steady. True. Jackson reached for his guitar, strumming a quiet tune he'd written just for her. No stadiums, no flashing lights. Just her. Just him. And the love that had started long before they ever knew each other's names. Hannah closed her eyes, listening to the boy who still sang for her even now. Even always. The last line of the song floated through the air like a promise. You made me feel known, so I'll love you in every silence, every song, every sunrise we wake up to, from now until always. And in that room, with no crowd to cheer, no letters left to send, only hearts at peace, they found their forever. The end. Dear listeners, thanks for being with us in this amazing journey of letters. Don't forget to like and share the video. See you in the next audiobook.